Good afternoon, everyone. This is my midterm project presentation video for my project for Min 352, Project Research Management. My name is Gage Foxglove. My problem statement for this project is how can I design 5 horror-themed character sheets while improving my digital drawing skills. Now, in order to draw 5 characters, I first had to decide which 5 characters I wanted to draw. At least to me, that seemed like the most logical first step. So, here on the right, you see 2 pages from my journal where I made lists of characters and whittled them down slowly until I had a final list of 5. And there are the 5 that I settled on. Now, before I started, I wanted to kind of get an artistic direction going and a look and feel for the overall project. So I created this mood board. Each of these images is something that I resonate with. There are character sheets on here, and those character sheets are similar to the ones that I want to do, although I think they'll be a little more dynamic. So they will be more like these character sheets here and here and also here, rather than the static ones like this. I included colors that I knew would make it into the project in one form or another. Some descriptors here, green color pops for effect, sharp and spiky, whatnot. As well as horror movie posters. Horror movies and horror comics are a huge influence on me, and I read quite a lot of comics and watch quite a lot of horror movies. And then some artwork that I really enjoyed that I thought resonated with me concerning this project. So that was my character sheet inspiration mood board. Now, as far as the characters go, I settled on 5: the Thin Man, Jack-o'-lantern, the Worm, the Mad Butcher, and the Slasher. And I'm going to kind of go into detail on how I decided on the looks for those and where I'm at now with the design process. So the Thin Man. I started with some words that I thought would describe kind of what the Thin Man was about. So tall, long limbs and hands, dark and shadowy, wide, sinister grin, and a suit and hat. And these were all descriptors, and I have a question mark by hat. I wasn't sure, and I still am not, whether I'm going to include a hat. But here's some of the mood board that I set up for the Thin Man. So at one point I called him the Grinning Man, and you can see here there's still a slide or a picture in here that shows that. So the Slender Man obviously was one of the big influences, and probably one of the main influences. And so was the Crooked Man from Conjuring 2. You see a couple of different versions of him. But the Slender Man is faceless, and I wanted to add at least a little bit of detail. So I decided on this wide kind of rictus grin. And that's where the Grinning Man comes in. He's an urban legend that persists, especially around UFOs and the Mothman. Sometimes called Indrid Cold. And he has a kind of wide, unchanging grin. And this is actually a still from the movie The Man Who Laughed, which was the inspiration for the Joker, believe it or not. Then the Shadow Man, or Hat Man, something that is reported, especially with sleep paralysis, of this shadowy figure with a hat that is also seen around other paranormal activity. And so those were some of the main influences for the Thin Man. And then for colors, I chose colors that I actually found within these images. So I have swatches of them here. They're kind of ranked by size, being which one is going to be used the most. So these greens first, and then the red and purple. I really like the shades that I found within these images, so I decided to use those. And then I'm working out some facial features and poses here. I have worked with other characters a little bit more, so this is kind of light on material, but I know I want him to be tall and willowy with long arms. and legs, and I know that this general facial shape with the high cheekbones, the sharp teeth and long nose, and the squinted eyes and sharp eyebrows are all going to make it into the final design. And I did a couple of dynamic poses. Here he is climbing through a window, and here again, reaching out for a victim. I think I'm going to include those poses in the final character sheet. The jack-o'-lantern character is one that I really enjoy seeing. It's very simple. It's a jack-o'-lantern head on a body, usually skeletal or covered in vines and vegetation. And I found some images of just that here from Pinterest. And I included some skeletons because I want to give it kind of a skeletal body, but I also wanted to include some vegetation. So you see here and here, that kind of sums that up with this kind of green essence. And that got included in the colors as well, this green essence. And here the reds and oranges of the skeleton, or of the jack-o'-lantern, forgive me, and the kind of dark purples in a lot of the backgrounds are going to make it in, as well as that electric green essence that I like oozing out of a couple of these, and I think I want to include that as well. As far as the characteristics go, the skeletal frame, the exaggerated jack-o'-lantern head, I want to include vines or vegetation around the body, and that green ooze or toxic color are all going to make it into the final design. And with this one, there are so many ways to draw pumpkins. So I've been experimenting a lot with pumpkin shapes for the head. I came up with different ways to do just that. I think this in the middle here is going to be the final kind of inspiration, the skull shape with the maxilla here kind of pointing down, and I could do anything really with the jaw, the mandible, the lower jaw at this point, because it's not included as part of this pumpkin shape, and I think this is what I want to go with. So this is probably going to end up being part of the final design, or inspiring the final design. And as far as the body goes, I've done a couple of things here. I haven't gotten as far into picking out poses or how I want this character to be standing on the character sheet, but I am working on that now, and we'll see that in the final character sheets. The Mad Butcher, this is another character that I see every so often in horror movies and things. There's actually a Mad Butcher movie, and you can kind of see part of the poster here in the corner. Fat, thick, short arms, a cleaver, and a bloody apron are about the only qualifications I have. Obviously, you can kind of see he's probably going to be bald or partially bald, surrounded by meat and blood. But with this, I found these colors within the images themselves I really liked to kind of accent the character. Very large guy, very short arms, but carries a very big cleaver, and that's going to be kind of, you can see in several places that's kind of a defining feature of the butcher, is the meat cleaver. And this was originally going to be for the slasher, but I changed the direction I went with him, and so this is probably going to be one of the poses I use with the butcher, and he's going to have his big cleaver up here. This is actually hand-drawn and scanned in. I do a much better job on paper right now, thinking and developing thoughts, but I'm learning to do more, obviously, on digital art. And I've been working with the face of the Mad Butcher. I really want to pin back the lips with kind of straps and hooks, and so I've been experimenting with that in a lot of these faces, and then of course adding his big cleaver and his bloody apron. So as far as the worm goes, this one is going to be difficult because he's basically a tube of skin and a mouth. So I was having trouble figuring out how are you going to pose and give character and personality to this tube of skin with a face, or with a mouth. And I looked up some pictures. These three are the Mongolian death worm, which is in A Legend in Mongolia. I think this is from the movie about the Mongolian death worm, but it looks a little more like these guys. These are graboids from the movie Tremors, and they are a little bit more inspiring, I think. I watched the seventh movie in the Tremors franchise around the time that I was thinking about the worm for this project, and these guys came up, and they have a lot of personality and just a little bit of, body shape. They're a tube with kind of these hook parts coming out of their mouth, but they also have these three like tentacles that come out, and I think that that's interesting and something I want to explore with this character. So they have mandibles or jaws that separate from the rest of their body, this kind of reddish color inside their mouth, and warty, bumpy skin. You can see little projections in this part of this picture up here, and multiple tongues is something that I really want to explore. So here we have worm faces and one pose. This was before I looked at the movie. I did most of these, so I haven't really thought about posing them. Obviously, now seeing the movie Tremors, I realize that there's a lot you can do with just this very simple tube shape or segmented shape. They're going to have, I like this kind of flapped open mouth with all the teeth, and I think that's going to make it into the final design as well. And clusters of eyes, you can see here and a little bit here, more prominently here. I want it to have multiple eyes all down the side of its face to give it kind of a unique look. And finally, the hulking slasher. I wanted to take the classic slasher villain and exaggerate the features as much as possible. So something like this guy here with the big shoulders up over his head and his head kind of far down on his body and these big muscular arms. And I think that that's what I'm going to go for. And he's going to have kind of the slasher villain attire, I guess, like a boiler suit or like a jacket and dark work pants like Jason here and gloves, and carry a very, very, very big machete, which I have not drawn yet, but I anticipate it's going to be as much fun as drawing a giant meat cleaver. So here I have a couple of poses. Here's Leatherface, and here's Jason, and the iconic hockey mask, of course. And definitely going to include the mask, the machete, and he's going to be huge. So with this, I'm working on poses. The pose with the knife drawn back over the head is pretty popular. And as far as the face goes, just that play on a hockey mask, similar to Jason or maybe Casey Jones from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, if anyone remembers him. And as far as poses go, really working on trying to get those shoulders up over that head now and really make him a Hulk with giant shoulders and arms. And I see a little bit of that in a couple of these here, but I haven't really developed it that far here. And that is all 5 of my baddies, and I'm very stoked to create the final character sheets and put it all together, and I hope you guys are stoked to see it. Thank you.